this target for ECOWAS.
The governor of Central Bank of the Gambia, who was on hand to receive the top ECOWAS official, buttressed some of the points made by Dr. Wadragu. Colley also delved into some of the challenges West African monetary institutions are faced with, but was however quick to commend the sub-region for its achievements regarding monetary cooperation.
The process to a monetary union is indeed a process, and as we move or march on, there are the so-called building blocks that are being put in place. It's good to have some timeline, but it is also important for us to bear in mind that as we move along, there are challenges. I'm happy to report that yes, it took a very long time, but indeed the ECOWAS sub-region has achieved a lot as far as the monetary cooperation program is concerned, but especially for the second monetary zone.
The importance attached to the work of various ECOWAS monetary institutions, West African central banks and other stakeholders in the realization of a robust second monetary zone and eventually a single currency cannot be overemphasized. In this, therefore, hope that the high-level meetings will go a long way towards ensuring the long-awaited and widely anticipated second currency for West Africa. Modu Bajan, Grts.
Well, time now to take our first break. The news continues momentarily. Welcome back. The United Nations has expressed concern over the risk of more violence in South Sudan and called on government troops and forces loyal to the former vice president to respect the integrity of UN installations. The warning comes as the two sides battle for control of the oil-rich town of Malacca, during which a UN installation was hit, forcing many civilians to flee the area. We have more in the CFI report.
A battle for the control of the town of Malakal in South Sudan is into its second day. Government forces and opposition rebels are engaged in heavy fighting in the oil-rich Upper Nile state, which has changed hands twice since the 15th of December. The fighting has hit United Nations installations and forced civilians to flee.
The UN mission says it's treating dozens of patients for wounds at its hospital. It calls on all the parties to respect the integrity of UN installations. As a result of today's violence, the number of uprooted people seeking refuge at the UN base in Malakal has, in fact, nearly doubled to 20,000.
Civilians are using any means possible to flee the area. 200 people drowned when an overcrowded ferry capsized. Further south in Jonglei State, South Sudan's government signed a peace agreement with the local militia leader, but fighting continues in other parts of Jonglei. High numbers of displaced are arriving in South Sudan's capital Juba, flocking to this camp in Tomping.
In this protection site, where most of the civilians came at the beginning of the fighting, we now have 17,000 people being sheltered by the United Nations.
According to United Nations figures, 400,000 people have been displaced in South Sudan. Some areas are difficult to reach for aid agencies, meaning people are surviving under very difficult circumstances. The United Nations Secretary General has condemned South Sudan's army and opposition rebels for stealing food and humanitarian supplies.
The Senegalese capital, Dakar, is playing host to a meeting of young leaders devoted to finding solutions to problems affecting the youth of Africa and creating employment opportunities for the continent's teeming mass of jobless youths. And the African immigrant movement in Israel has taken to the streets again, urging the Jewish state to recognize their status as refugees. CFI has the details of these and other stories in this African News Roundup.
Sub-Saharan migrants entered Spain's North African territory of Melilla on Wednesday after charging a barbed wire border fence. About 4 hours earlier, another group of around 300 tried to storm the border, but no one managed to get in. 15 of them got into a building and took refuge on the roof. Police made them come down and took them to a temporary center. Many were injured and had to be given medical care on the spot. African immigrants in Israel continue with their protest movement. On Wednesday, a group of African women took to the streets of Tel Aviv. They are demanding Israel to recognize their status as refugees. They're also protesting against a law which makes it possible to place illegal immigrants in detention camps without trial for as long as 1 year. Some 60,000 immigrants, mostly from Eritrea and Sudan, have reportedly entered Israel without authorization since 2006. Many are asking for political asylum, saying they cannot return home without risking their lives. Youth unemployment is at the center of the 4th Summit of Young Leaders taking place in Dakar in Senegal. Chaired by the Senegalese Prime Minister Aminata Touré, the meeting is underlining the problem of huge numbers of young people without jobs in Africa. Out of 10 unemployed persons, 6 are between the ages of 18 and 35.
In Africa, we have 36 million young people without jobs, which corresponds to an unemployment rate of 10.3%.
It is day 2 of Egypt's referendum on the new constitution. Tuesday's voting was marred by sporadic violence. CNN's Reza Sayer is in Cairo and she now tells us more.
Well, obviously, turnout is key for this military-backed interim government. They want a strong turnout to boost their credibility and legitimacy. We've been visiting polling stations throughout the morning. We're at another one here in Cairo, and this is pretty much what we've observed. No long lines, but a steady trickle of voters coming in. This is the line for women voters over there. It's the men voting. Earlier this morning at a couple of other polling stations, we saw no lines and we saw relatively empty polling stations. What we are seeing is strong nationalist sentiment, strong support for the Constitution, and strong sentiments against the Muslim Brotherhood. This is a man who pretty much sums up the sentiment. This is Awad Abdul Bari Awad, a veteran. His hat says yes to the Constitution for beloved Egypt, and the terrorist group, the Muslim Brotherhood, in the trash bin of history. You really get the sense that there's deep-seated hatred for the Muslim Brotherhood. Many believe that this is a vote against the former President Mohammed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood. What's remarkable is throughout the past 2 days, we haven't come across a single person who's told us that they're going to vote no for this constitution. And rights groups say that's a troubling indication of a repressive and intimidating atmosphere established by this military-backed government and the state media that's really stifling debate and descending on any kind of crackdown. So several more hours left on this second and final day of this referendum. Many analysts say this constitution is going to pass with a yes vote, and that could set the stage for a potential presidency for Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the army chief. He's certainly the most popular man in Egypt. Rights groups say if he is elected president, though, that could be an indication that Egypt is going towards another military-ruled autocracy and away from the freedoms and democracy that many Egyptians fought for back in the 2011 revolution.
Welcome back. It's time for the weather report from the Central Forecast Office.
The source assures us of a continuous flow, and from there, everything follows. And for those of us who know what the River Gambia stands for, understanding its sustainability in all aspects of life is easily confirmed. The River Gambia provides nutritious delicacies as food, while it provides its wildlife a balanced ecosystem. This river, as a sanctuary, is committed